Okay, we are recording.
Excellent. With that, I would like to introduce María Tomás-Keegan. As a certified career and life coach specializing in transition, María Tomás-Keegan helps women turn their upside-down world right side up again. In the aftermath of major life events such as career upheaval, loss of a loved one, caregiving, or divorce, your life has taken a profound turn. And many women wonder, who am I now that things have changed? As a transition expert, award-winning author, and producer-host of an international podcast, María is passionate about sharing effective strategies and practical approaches to adapt to life's inevitable ups and downs, ebbs and flows, and inside outs. She helps her clients reimagine life and design their next chapter, honoring their values, vision, and voice. With life experience, including 30 years in corporate management, coupled with navigating many personal life challenging events along the way, María understands what her clients go through after the dust settles. She also understands how hard it can be to ask for help. What she knows for sure is juggling family, friends, community, and career responsibilities makes for a very full plate. And many of us feel the need to be perfect all of the time. So you're not alone. So María, might as well dig right in. We've been at this shelter in place thing for quite a few weeks now. Any stories, any learnings for you from this? And does anybody want to share their experience with sheltering in place?
Yeah, I was talking to my niece just a week or two ago, and they're in Massachusetts, and they've been, as you guys are, I'm in Arizona, so as you guys on the East Coast have been sheltering in place longer than we have. She works. She now works from home. Her husband works and now works from home, and they have a 4-year-old who now is homeschooled. And the story she was telling me about how this sheltering in place has changed their lives so dramatically. The funny story is she said to me, I have a much deeper respect for teachers than I ever had before. And I had to laugh because they're not teachers, neither one of them. They're great parents, but that's not the role they play. So they videotape Ben taking Ruby out for recess and help her to fly a kite. And that's their recess. So that, it's just very interesting to me how things have changed for so many of us, and there have been, literally life-altering changes as a result of this. But there's that little tidbit of, I really think the teachers are doing a great job, and it's not an easy one.
I think teachers should be paid $1 gazillion an hour now that everybody appreciates the work. So, on the flip side, I'm very used to working virtually. I meet with clients all over the nation. I use the GoToMeeting platform. This is Zoom, but I use a similar platform all the time, and I'm very good at it. But what I'm not good at is having my husband home at the same time. So he's in his office, and I have relocated to the side of the kitchen. And it's not unusual for client privacy. I've got my headset on. So here I am silent, listening to something intently, maybe typing, and he's completely unaware that I'm doing something that is work. And he comes in and he starts putting things in the blender, including a big hunk of ice, and without asking, he just presses start. And if any of you has a Vitamix, it's like the sound of a small fishing boat motor when it starts. It's blew up my whole conversation. So, even if you're good at it, you're not good at it anymore. There's always something to learn.
Yeah, things change. Things change. Who else has a story for us? Anyone? stories about what's changed for you. Okay.
I'm just hiking more.
Nice.
Well, that's a good
Nice.
thing, right? That you're
Yeah.
doing a very healthy thing. I know a lot of people are going to the
Personally.
refrigerator more.
hmm
Yeah.
I think we really had to pivot, Andrea and I, more so with our business than anything. The home life hasn't necessarily changed, but our biggest pivots have been with, we've got, I think, 15 employees between our two businesses that we have to make sure we have the right leadership hats on, and those hats are adjusting minute by minute depending on the different news, and they range from age 19 to probably mid 30s. So our biggest pivot's been that, and the direction we've taken with that is how can, supporting them, having enough Zoom calls throughout the week that they can jump on as they need support and talk through things, provide them some administrative work at the med spas to keep them, actively engaged, pivoting on how we can get back to the community and actually serve the community, serve our employees, and let our employees do some educational moments to also serve the community, because that's what we're here for, and it helps them have, feel like they're also, being part of something, greater than this pandemic that we'll soon be getting out of. So that's the biggest thing that's changed for, us.
That's great, Janie.
Certainly figuring out how to adapt to the changes in real time that we've all had to make. It can be overwhelming for some, and some handle it better than others. Maria, why do you think it's been so hard for so many?
Oh, I think it's because it came up so fast. There was very little warning about how big this would be, and it's changed so many things at one time that that's a shock. It's a shock to the system. I think our sense of safety and security have been, in some cases, shattered, and we're uncertain about when it'll be over. Sherry, you just heard that sheltering in place is going to last another month. Who knows what'll happen after that? Those kinds of news reports can be very unsettling for us. And there's no way of telling at this point in time how much the world will really change after this. What we knew as normal will no longer be normal. There will be a new normal, and we have no idea what that is. So all of this brings up a lot of fear, especially fear of the unknown. So as I hear myself describe this, what I'm thinking is that I've also just described what it feels like to be going through other kinds of major life changes, like divorce or the loss of a loved one. Any one of those life-changing events, we feel very much the same kinds of things. And I think that when we think about how we have gone through those kinds of changes in the past, if we think about the tools we've used in the past, we maybe can dust those off and help ourselves at this point in time.
You used the word uncertainty, and one of the things that is so important is to understand the relationship between uncertainty and stress, and uncertainty and grief. And both of those things, divorce, loss, losing your job, being food insecure, being financially insecure, all of those things, and even worrying about people who are if you're not, all of those things increase stress. And stress, especially as women, it's not our friends. Cortisol is not our friend. And if there's one thing that I tell people, they frequently will start a conversation with me, Sherry, what should I invest in? And my answer is always your health. You should invest in your health in good times and bad times. And I know that we have some very active people on the line right now. It is refrigerators notwithstanding, it is doubly important right now that we invest in our health, because uncertainty and fear or grief are absolute triggers for those damaging hormones that are just going to snowball and make things worse, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
You use the words change and transition a lot. Are they interchangeable?
No, they're not. As I see it, or the way I like to think about it, is that change is that external event that happens in our lives. It kind of happens to us. And transition is what happens to us on the inside, kind of from the inside out, when we begin to adapt to the changing environment for ourselves. It is that experience of growth. That's how I see the difference between change and transition.
Tell me more about the transition aspect of change, please, and its importance, because the internal stuff is everything, right?
The internal stuff, yes, I think it is. I think you're so right about that. So why does it matter that we understand about transition? I think it has to do with our desire to face a change in our lives and say to ourselves, this is not how my story ends. This is where it begins. And that gives us a sense of motion, movement, growth. And it matters that when change comes at us, that we learn to adapt to that, so that we don't get stuck in one place, and we can move through it and get to the other side of it with some perspective that helps us going forward.
So we get stuck. I'm thinking that we're just all a little bit of control freaks. In show of hands, who's a control freak? Okay, the rest of you are lying.
Yeah, just a little, come on. Just sometimes.
So in terms of we all get stuck a little, and I hear you loud and clear. Who's felt a little bit out of control, and how does that make you feel? And have you kind of doubled down on wrapping your arms around your control freak behavior over the past few weeks? Anybody want to comment? I see a nod.
So I haven't been sheltering in place until Tuesday, because I work at a hospital. So it was a little bit surreal for me to have everyone talking about sheltering in place and still going to work every day and seeing the same people and everything. But on Monday I was furloughed, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply for unemployment. And then the process is just as difficult as I guess everyone who's going through it is making it seem. So I was sort of like, I mean, I still did things in the meantime, but I was like, oh, I don't want to go for a walk until I get this taken care of. So that was my aspect of control. Like, until I finalize my unemployment claim, I can't feel comfortable. And so after this morning when I did that, now I'm like, okay, I can breathe now until, something happens tomorrow, who knows?
That's a great example, Jen, of taking control where you can. So I find that there are a lot of people that I'm talking to these days who are experiencing this loss of control in a big way. And it's truly impacting how they feel. They're getting depressed. They are feeling like there's nothing they can do, so they do nothing. You know, they literally are feeling like the victim here. And I like to stress that doesn't have to be the case, and that there are a lot of things that we can control within our environment. So there's nothing we can do about COVID. It's here. It's apparently here to stay for a little while. What we can control, though, is what happens within our space, within our bodies, within our mind, within the choices we make. So things like, what time do I get up every day? What kind of routine do I have during the day? What time do I go to bed every day? Those are things we can control. How patient am I? How kind am I? How much effort do I want to put into a task? I have lots of friends who literally have more time on their hands. I don't know where that came from, because I don't. I am busier than I ever have been. I don't know. I'm missing out on something or doing something wrong. I'm not sure which. But anyway, they're literally taking their houses apart and reorganizing and doing things like that that are very active, and they give them a sense of satisfaction at the end. So it's important, I think, to do things like, figure out, if you're depressed, how do you make yourself laugh? How open-minded are you about what's going on in the world and what you hear and how you process it? Those are all choices we get to make. Does that ring any bells with anybody here? Anything else come up for you?
I hear you loud and clear. There are a couple of things that I've stuck by that work for me. And I too, this is a little busier time for me. Coaches, therapists, financial advisors, we get pinged now to talk people off the ledge. So I think one of the most important things is that regardless of what I'm wearing, I put my lace-up shoes on, my lace-up walking shoes, rather than my slippers, and rather than being barefoot. And I learned that from a young mommy manual, that you feel better when you're a young mommy if you put on your lace-up shoes. And that's really for years. The other two things we've done is to feel useful, because staying home doesn't feel like we're saving lives. The food pantries are in fairly dire shape. And so Fred, who's been blessedly doing all the grocery shopping, he's been getting a case of canned goods, mixed canned goods when he goes out. And our Friday night date night is dropping it off at the Open Door Mission, and then getting curbside takeout from a restaurant near us, so that we're kind of preserving date night and feeling like, hey, I did this one thing that is active, as opposed to just staying home to be part of the solution.
Yep. I love that. I love that. And thank you for doing that. That's so very nice of you.
Anybody else? Ideas? Oh, wait.
Caitlin, I love what you said. You're right. It is something to look forward to, Friday night date night, and to do something.
I'll take anything.
Yeah. You know what I'm missing most is hugs. I'm so missing hugs.
Sure.
Anybody else? Yeah. Nodding heads, I see.
So Caitlin, Maria, anything else that we should be thinking about when we're feeling a loss of control? Any other ideas from your bag of tricks?
I think there are, well, a lot of it is how much, my old standby prayer just came up for me that my grandmother taught me. I'm sure you all know it. The serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, have the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference I think for me, when I'm feeling out of control, when I'm feeling like I need to exert some control, so I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile. And I think I've just hit the nail on the head for me, feeling like I'm doing something worthwhile. Sherry, I think that's probably where you and Fred are with delivering canned goods to the mission, doing something
just
worthwhile for someone
something.
else, right? For someone else. So reach out, we have such great technology options today. Reaching out to others is my way of feeling worthwhile. And I'm doing more of these Zoom calls and Zoom meetings these days than ever before. So I think that's another thing that we can do, is just reach out to others, because you know what? They're feeling exactly like we're feeling.
So I'm with you on the written notes. Written notes are so powerful, Caitlin.
Yep.
And they come up every time, and it's just, we never do enough of them. And there's, if you can't look forward to much, the mail still gets through, and it's safe, and we should pick up the mail. So any other thoughts from anybody? Because I want to continue to some of Maria's strategies. Any feedback, thoughts, questions? Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Did somebody jump in?
No, I said we're good.
Maria, you promised to share 5 strategies to help us adapt to change, to not just this change, but changes in general. So I realize that's broad. Can you share with me the first of the 5, and we'll just run through the list?
Sure, and I like to say these are 5 strategies to adapt to change with dignity and grace.
I like it.
Because that's the way I want to do it. So I've learned how to do it myself, and it's what I teach. And the first one is literally, and you hear this all the time, just accept the change. It is what it is. There is nothing that we can do to change what's happening to us today, COVID-19. Nothing we can do about that. If we were in a situation where there was an accident and someone got badly hurt that changed our lives, or we lost as a result, there's nothing we can do to change that. So you have to let that shock wear off first, but to duck and cover from it is not really a very healthy way to approach it. I believe you need to face it head on as soon as you can. And that, again, after that period of shock wearing off. And then allow your emotions to flow through. I believe that emotions need motion, so that they don't get stuck in one place. They don't get stuck in your heart or in your chest or in your throat. But you give them the ability to flow through you by acknowledging them. And then choose to be the victor rather than the victim. So this is a sense of how you want to handle it. How do you want to show up in this? And then approach the change in a way that allows you to look yourself in the mirror and like what you see. That's dignity. That's what you're going to see when you look back.
Are there people or are there personality types that do better accepting the change than not?
Yeah. I think it's probably easier to focus on the and not. People who are stubborn, people who don't want to, they resist. anything that doesn't feel right to them. You know, Shani, you are not included in this, but there are a lot of gym rats. Shani is a health nut, as I lovingly call her. She's a health nut. But there are some gym rats that are really fighting and resisting not being at the gym. And they're not adequately facing what is here and now. It is what it is, and we
So I think
better.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just think that's funny because there are healthy people who live healthy lifestyles who are movement. And Shani, that sounds like you, and I know that's also Caitlin. And I would love to include myself, but you know, Tuesday and Thursday. But that's but the gym rats are different because it's not even about the health and the movement. It's about the gym. It's about the gym and the community.
Right. Yeah.
So that change that, you know, again, we talk about people who are change resistant. So accept the change. I'm just kind of keeping it moving here.
Yeah.
The second one, so once we accept the change, we look in the mirror with dignity and say it is what it is. What's the second?
So likely you're feeling a lot of emotion, probably a lot of fear when you are faced with change that you didn't want. You might, whether it came unexpectedly or you knew it was going to happen, there's probably fear of uncertainty. You might even feel angry. I suggest that you don't allow that to paralyze you. So when you face what scares you and you talk about your feelings, and as I said before, you give them motion or you allow there to be motion for the emotion. Talk with people that you trust so that you can get the words out. Sometimes when you express it and put it out there, it's not so scary. I often suggest that my clients journal or just write. Sometimes the word journaling scares people in and of itself. Just write down your thoughts, your feelings, and set it aside for a while, and then come back and read it. And again, when you do that, it's often not so scary. And I think that what happens in doing that, either expressing it verbally and or writing it down, you gain a certain self-awareness that helps you to literally face what scares you in a way that makes it easier for you.
One of my favorite tools for facing down fear is always remembering the John Maxwell book. One of my favorite pieces of coaching is the failing forward concept. And that's that you only have to start, and it does not matter if you don't succeed because you're on your way to succeeding. Nobody comes out of the gate and runs a 4-minute mile. You have to fail to run a 4-minute mile by running an 8, a 7, a 6, and a 5-minute mile first. And so it really is just, you don't have to get over the fear. You just have to start something.
Right.
You just have to move.
Absolutely. That's right.
All right.
That's that motion thing. That's that motion piece. Yep.
Accept the change, face the emotions, permit them to come through, face what scares you. And number 3.
I think it's all about perspective, changing how you look at things. I love reading Wayne Dyer, and he has a famous quote: "When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change."
Mm-hmm.
And I wholeheartedly believe that. Perspective is your friend. when it comes to dealing with change. What would happen if you switched the way you looked at the situation? I have a little story, personal story to share. I worked for IBM for 20 years, 20 of my 30-year corporate career. And I was planning on retiring from IBM. I had all my plans set. And about 2 years in advance of my plan, IBM divorced me and my entire global team. And I say that very consciously. They divorced me because that's exactly how it felt. And I remember back when I did get divorced that there were very similar feelings. After I put my team through, or after I informed them that they were being released from the company, laid off, I went into a depression like never before. I was devastated. I was immobilized, and I had never experienced anything like that before. It took me a couple of weeks of just wallowing in that victimhood before I realized that I was going nowhere fast. And a colleague called me. She had just heard the news and she said, "Maria, how are you doing?" And I went through this litany of things that I was worried about. And they were not insignificant things for me. And she stopped me in the middle of my list and she said, "Maria, what if it was your idea? What would you do then?"
Wow.
It flipped a switch for me. Those, what are they, 6 words, flipped a switch for me. And this is just perspective, right? It made me think about, what if it was my idea? So I had this dream that I was going to retire in 2 years. So what would I be doing instead of what I'm doing now? And it opened things up for me. It literally flipped things around. It was powerful, those 6 words for me. So I think that when you realize that not everything's in your control and you get to make a choice about how you respond to what's happening around you, and then you examine how you managed in the past and learn from those, dust off those tools, use them again, and look for the unexpected gems that come from the times that things have changed for you in the past and what you can use now. And just flip that perspective for yourself. What if it was your idea?
I find that so powerful for large and small things. Just, when something happens that angers you, that you're not in control of,
Yeah.
to say, well, what if I was in control of this? What if this was my choice? And so I love that. I will use that. All right. So accept the change. Let me see if I can recite this back. Accept the change. Face what scares you. Change how you look at things, and the things you look at will change. And what is number 4?
It's build resilience, not resistance. So we talked a little bit about resistance before and stubbornness. Allow the change to make you stronger, more resilient, bounce back. It's the ability to bounce back faster. And the more change you've gone through, and God knows, people of a certain age have gone through a lot of change in their lives. When we learn from each experience with change, so that the next time it happens, it doesn't take you down for the count. You get to bounce back faster. it doesn't last so long that that you are down for the count. And maybe you just drop to your knees instead of to the floor. But that's what resilience is. And again, learning from your past strengths. There's so much that we can learn from the way we have behaved in the past, whether we've done it well or not. There's always something we can learn and bring forward to now. And since life is designed to change, you always need those tools in your treasure chest to fall back on that allow you, and hopefully one of them is like a bouncing ball, and you can just set on that bouncing ball and just get right back to your feet and figure out how it is you want to move forward.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Makes good sense.
So Sherry, I was just thinking as I was talking about that, resilience comes in all kinds of flavors, and we need resilience for all kinds of things. I'll bet you have something to say about financial resilience.
I have lots of things to say about financial resilience. So financial planning is fundamentally a defensive game. The people who come out of this financially in a good place, the people who say, I never want to feel this way again, how do I protect myself? These are people who don't just play offense. So while you're building emotional resilience, while you're using your talents and your errors to build resilience from your past to your future, financial resilience is absolutely about getting the defensive game strong so you never have to feel like this again. And that's why for all of the nonsense that's going on, our banks are not undermined because they built up reserves after 2008. They have financial resilience. My clients, whom I coach very carefully to have the right liquidity, the right amount of cash on hand, to have assets that are not necessarily in the market, debt, cash flow, insurances, these are defensive tools. So we say offense sells tickets, defense wins championships. Financial resilience is a defensive game. So thank you for asking, because yes, that's part of it.
Yep. And I think that's how we win in the end. And I mean win for ourselves, right? That's with resilience. That's how we can plan to come out of anything that comes at us with more dignity and grace.
Let me make one other point, and then, well, I guess master the obvious. The other point is that when your transition involves moving from employment to non-employment, or moving from employment to entrepreneurship or something, the first step is to replace the benefits that you've lost or permitted to. I mean, that's just, so many people are so focused on getting the new thing started that they forget that there's something to replace. And that is the role of partnering with a coach, whether that is a career coach, a life coach, a sales coach, a business coach, a financial coach. That's the whole point of having somebody over your shoulder saying, hey, here's the best practice checklist. So that's probably a perfectly good segue to number 5. So we've got accept the change, face what scares you, how you look at things, change how you look at things, and the things you look at will change, build resilience, and number 5, hit it.
Don't do it alone. This is, the day of the lone wolf is over. I suspect that this period of change that we're in right now will be a shining example of how we all were designed to be a community, because we are in a situation where that has been in many ways taken away, removed from us in the way we used to do it, we are finding other ways to build a community, to stay connected. And I think that when you're going through major changes, we need to talk to people about it. We need to have a group of people in our lives who support us no matter what. They have our back. And these are a group of individuals that we pick, that we choose very consciously. I call this our personal board of directors. So I have one. I've had one for years. Call it whatever you like. You may call it your band of angels, or your front row, or your first class cabin, whoever they are that can get you through whatever it is you're going through. So this might include certainly your best friend, but your best friend can't always, usually can't, fulfill all the roles you need. So if you need legal advice, if you need financial advice, if you need career advice, there are people in your circle that you can tap into, and you need to tap into when you are feeling alone, when you're feeling a little depressed, when you feel like you need to laugh, when you feel like you need to cry, when you feel like you just can't figure this problem out and you want to brainstorm a solution. Those are probably different people that you would tap into. Who are they? Put those together very consciously. Have your list, your personal board of directors, so that you can take solace in the fact that you are truly never alone.
That is wonderful. And I'm a big fan of the Girlfriends Network. A big fan of using coaches. I think that when, we all need some coaching. I had a thought, and it's the reason, I'm just being way too candid here. It's the reason I never go to my mother for advice. And that's that I find that when there's someone who is very close to you, perhaps too close, they fear you getting hurt more than they can be candid about giving you the help you need. So if I ask my mother if I should take a dare, she's going to give me a lot of reasons why it's not the right thing to do, because she lives in a place of fearing my disappointment or me getting hurt. Whereas if I ask you, Maria, that same question and lay out my plan for you, you may say, that's a brilliant idea. Let me put you in touch with this person who's actually in that business or who's actually done this before.
Exactly.
And so that was what popped into my head about the board of directors. Be careful, wagging finger, be careful who's on that board of directors and who you go to for what advice.
Yeah. And sometimes you need to vent, right? But you don't want to be venting to someone who's just going to play it all back to you and keep you in that negative space, right? You want someone who will allow you to vent and say, okay, you got that off your chest now? Let's move. Let's move on, right?
Let's move.
So what's next, right? You need someone, a lot of tough love goes into that.
Yeah, you get one poor baby and everything after that is a suck it up buttercup. Okay, so 5 strategies. So accept the change, face what scares you. When you change how you look at things, what you look at changes, build resilience, and don't go it alone. I absolutely love that. Anybody have questions for Maria, thoughts, comments, or color commentary that you would like to add?
Come on, ladies, let's open it up. Any thoughts about what I've talked about? Any experiences of your own?
Go ahead, Andrea.
That's like, okay. One of the things that you were talking about with building resilience, that's something that Shani and I both experienced from kind of like one extreme to the other. And we kind of went into this whole COVID thing, having been through life changes in the past, you know, whether it's been our, you know, family's deaths or even like 9/11, which was our, you know, that, and then like the housing crisis. And Shani and I were kind of like, okay, here's another thing, we're going to get through it. How do we do this? And what we didn't realize was that our team, who was younger, like early 20s, was really struggling with it. Like to the point where we had a conversation with one of them and we were just like, why are you feeling this way? This is, I mean, it was like devastation, complete devastation. And we both kind of had to put our minds together and talk it through. And like, this is like their first experience doing this.
Exactly right.
So it forced us to be a little bit more patient with those people who were really struggling with this. And we really wanted to be there to be that support system to help lift them up when they're ready.
So
And
you and Shani are on her board of directors.
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah. And I would encourage you to share that idea, the board of directors idea, with her. And thank you for doing that. And you're absolutely right. It's because she doesn't have the experience you guys have. You know, when you've been on the planet for a few years and you've gone through a few things, you get to draw on that experience if you're aware, if you're self-aware. If you realize that you've learned something from that experience that you can bring forward and you can teach others. And that's the beauty of this connection thing, is we get to share with people that that we can learn from and that we can offer information to. It's like this, I have this vision in my head right now of a woman below me reaching up and I'm reaching down. I'm getting as much from her as she's going to get from me, but you know, lift as you climb. I love that idea, and thank you for doing that.
If I can jump in there and suggest a way to think about this, you know, sometimes the boss-employee relationship has limits, and you're not sure how personal you can get. But a group coach, courtesy of a third party like Maria, might be just the thing for the team. Just a thought. Anybody else, comments, questions for Maria?
Hey, Maria, one comment I would have, I had the same similar situation when I worked for corporate with PetSmart. And when they were bought out, several of us were let go very quickly. And it was my retirement. It was my six-figure income, $30,000, $40,000 bonuses every year. It was my plan. It was all my plan. And I quickly learned, but it was about 2 weeks for me that I was like playing the victim. I'm like the best person they possibly have. How could this happen to me? Totally devastated. And then realizing very quickly that I attached my purpose to something that could be taken away from me. Right. So I don't attach my purpose to something that can be taken away from me anymore. So how I'm personally going about this and dealing with this is, I know that we are never in control. We've never been in control. As much as we feel like we have no control right now, we don't, but we really have never had a lot of control other than putting our own boundaries in place and deciding on how we stay inside those boundaries. So for me, you know, it's faith over fear, and I have to keep, you know, me personally aligned with that. And that would just be the message I would send on how personally I'm dealing with it, because Andrew and I both are dealing with it personally, and then we both equally, as business owners together, we have the professional hat and how we deal with it within the team. So that's what I would share.
I love that. You don't attach don't attach yourself to anything that can be taken away. You know, that is the master class.
It is. So
it
well
is the
done,
master
Shani.
class, and I applaud you, Shani. I think that's why I love you so much, Shani and I know each other really well, because there is some great power in that, in realizing that when you're in a career, you're not in control over that business. You're working for someone else, and they get to make the business decisions that affect you. How it affects you is your choice. How you respond to that is your choice. And Shani, that is, I learned the same lesson the hard way, like you did, and it's a brilliant lesson. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And I was going to just one more thing. Well, I'm so excited about coming out of this on the other side, because we are not attached to a corporation or a business. We are in control as we come out of this. And I'm like, my live last night, I was so jacked up and excited because I do lives every night around something positive. And I was so excited because of how our team's coming together. And Andrew and I have complete control over how we maximize this in our favor. So I'm so glad I'm not attached to a corporation. I'm so glad I'm a small business owner, because we're going to rock this as we come out on the other side. So
Yeah.
that's a little sense of control I know that we do have.
Yeah.
So I want to be respectful of time, but with your permission, Shani, I'm going to send you a little email, because there's a reason that Maria and I got together. And this reason that I encourage people that you're just never no one's going to be as loyal to you as you are to them. So be loyal to yourself.
Yep.
You will see that Maria has posted in the chat the link to her book. It is From Darkness to Light, Adapting to Change and Moving Through Transition. She's posted the link. That is your gift. It's really useful. I encourage you to give it a read. And her website is www.transitionandthrivewithmaria.com. And of course, she is available for coaching individuals and groups, specifically around transitions, life transitions, business transitions, etc. Any last words from you, Maria, and then I will sign off?
No, I just want to thank everyone so much for being here today. This has been an honor, and I've really enjoyed chatting with all of you and meeting all of you, some of you for the first time.
And I thank you all, those of you I know and those of you who I am newly meeting. For my part, I am with the Atrium Financial Group of Northwestern Mutual. I specialize in second opinions. That is how I start my relationships. I work with unapologetically careerist women and men and the partners who aren't scared of them. So there.
And that's your story, and you're sticking to it, right, Sherry?
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You have been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful, successful day, and be safe and healthy, everyone. And thank you, María Tomás-Keegan, for joining us for this conversation.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Bye.
Bye, gang.